All right, well, welcome once again, everyone. Today is Tuesday, August 5th, 2025, and we are joined by Justine Vallieres with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So I will let you continue your introduction, Justine, and we're really looking forward to your presentation here and the Q&A that will follow. So I'll stop my
Awesome.
screen share and hand it over to you. Thanks so much.
Okay. Yeah, give me a second. As people enter, is it still gonna make that dinging sound?
It'll still make the dinging
Okay.
sound, so just to know that that's coming.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. It
All
might be a
right.
little distracting. You could change your settings, but it might be a little too late in the game for that.
Nope, that's
Yeah. All
we'll
right.
we'll push through. All right. Sharing now. You guys see that? Are we good?
Yep, that looks perfect. Good to go.
Okay. Awesome.
And you're
Well,
sharing
yeah.
your audio too?
Um, it didn't yes, I am.
Okay.
Yep. Share sound. Yep. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you for having me here today. So my name's Justine Vallieres. I am a bear and lion conflict specialist for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks based here in Kalispell, Montana. So I work out of the Region 1 office here. And today, yeah, we're just going to be talking about managing bears and reducing conflict here in Montana. I definitely don't want to speak for all my fellow bear conflict specialists up here in the state, but for the most part, we're all kind of on the same page about a lot of this stuff. But I did want to just say, I'm coming at it from my perspective and what I do here up in my little section of the world. So I've been doing bear conflict management here for 8 years, four of which I was Tim Manley's technician. Tim was the grizzly bear conflict specialist here for 37 years, and then when he retired, I was fortunate enough to get the specialist position, and so I've been doing that for the last 4 years. Oop, and now we're not moving. Let's see. Here we go. All right. So, what is it that bear conflict specialists do? It's more like what don't we do when it comes to bears? We're kind of doing it all. Every day looks different, every hour looks different. But for a lot of folks, I think a lot of you, you think of us and we're on the ground, we're trapping, we're relocating bears. And the big thing I want people to realize is how much prevention and conflict mitigation goes into our jobs. That is such a big and crucial part of this work. It's not just wrangling bears all day, every day, which some days we do, but yeah, we're the middleman dealing with the public and then with the bears, hazing them out of garbage. We're the people you call if you have bears hanging in your fruit trees. Killing livestock, getting into your chicken coop, hanging around your property, anything like that, you're calling us. But a lot of our work is doing prevention. And so using preventative tools like putting up electric fence, using motion sensor alarms, working one-on-one with landowners, giving people bear resistant containers, and garbage cans. It's all of the above. And so a big important part of conflict work is education. Doing events like this, webinars, working within the communities, going to community events like farmers markets, having tables and booths set up to get to really know the people in your community. And building that relationship and that trust is so critical in this work. And as a society, we tend to be more reactive rather than proactive. We wait till the worst thing happens and then we're like, oh, we gotta fix this, we gotta change this. And in this line of work, it's all about being proactive. You want to get ahead of the problem before it becomes an even bigger one. And so I will say up here in Northwest Montana, Eric and myself, Eric Wenham, he's the other conflict bear specialist that I work with here in the valley. So it's kind of divided. He covers the south, I cover the north. And just to put it in perspective, how busy we can be, on average in the last 3 years, we had about 1,200 calls per year. We get on average about 726 conflict calls. And on average, in the last 3 years, we've had 245 site visits per year. And then on average, 168 preventative actions taken per year. So, kind of did some quick numbers today to put those together for you. So, when I give presentations, I normally ask people, what do you see here? And most people say, oh, I see a bear, I see a freezer, I see garbage. They state the obvious. But when I look at this picture, what I see is we are teaching these bears come up into our space, into our what we consider our safe place, and get a food reward. And so that female right there, she's teaching her cub that exact same thing. When you see homes, when you see people, there's potential that there's a food reward. So go up and check it out. So I will say that cub right there, a couple years ago, I did have to remove him as a 2-year-old. He was getting into all sorts of stuff, including he had figured out how to get into bear-resistant garbage cans in Glacier National Park. So really unfortunate there. So I tell people bear conflict management is human management, 100%. My job is really, really working with people and trying to figure out people. And I would say about 80 to 90, percent of my job is human management. Bears, honestly, they're pretty simple. I mean, so to speak. They're highly intelligent. They're super food driven. What anchors them to a place is food. They're living off of their noses. They're following their noses, and they're getting themselves into trouble. And yeah, you take away that food source, and they're probably going to keep moving on. So securing attractants is really critical when living in bear country. So for those of you that aren't familiar with where I'm at in Montana, I am in Kalispell. You can see that up in the northwest corner there. And yeah, I'm part of the Northern Continental Divide ecosystem. So we're going to kind of zoom in so you can look a little bit closer at my area here. And so that blue line you'll see is Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, Region 1. So like I said earlier, that's shared between myself, Eric Wenham, and then Garrett Tovey also is the other third conflict specialist for that area. So we cover some pretty big ground up here. And I don't know if you can see my mouse, but in the middle there, that's Flathead Lake, and then you got the Flathead Valley here. And so, like I said, I cover the northern part of the section of the valley, pretty much up this area, and then Eric is kind of down in this lower southern portion, and then Garrett's over here. And then, so that yellow line is what we call the NCDE. That's the Northern Continental Divide Ecosystem Boundary Line. We'll talk about that here in a second. And then the gray line is what we call the demographic monitoring area. So grizzly bears are still listed as endangered in the lower 48. And so the NCDE is one of 6 grizzly bear recovery ecosystems. And so within that ecosystem, we figure we have about 1,200 or so grizzly bears growing at about 2% each year. And in terms of black bears, we are currently doing a population study, so hopefully within the next couple years we'll have a better idea of where their numbers are at. And then I don't think I explained the DMA. The demographic monitoring area is basically the area outside the initial recovery zone where we are still monitoring and studying the grizzly bear population, and that still is counting towards that NCDE. So there's really nowhere else in the lower 48 that has both the density of grizzly bears and black bears that we have. So we really do live in the heart of bear country here. And that's why, again, it's so critical to properly secure attractants and to educate people on how to live and recreate responsibly and safely in bear country. So on the screen here, don't get too overwhelmed, but you're looking at about 10 collared grizzly bear locations over about a 10-year period. That red line is the NCDE boundary line. Again, you're looking at Flathead Valley, you got Flathead Lake right there. And so the pink is female, blue male. But yeah, you can really see bears live amongst us. They're here, they're in the valley. They live here with us. So if you follow down the middle of that valley, you'll see, again, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I'm running my mouse down that line there. That is the Flathead River. So rivers are essentially they're bear highways. Bears traverse the landscape using those a lot. We have a lot of rivers here, a lot of lakes, and they use those to get from point A to point B. Has a lot of natural foods, service berries, choke cherries, great coverage in the hot summer months, and yeah, a great way to kind of move around the valley bottom without running into as many people. So bears, they don't know city boundaries. They don't know town limits. They don't know any of that. Those are made up lines for us. So you're looking at the city of Whitefish here, which is just, 20 minutes north of Kalispell. And so each color represents a collared grizzly bear location. So you're looking at about five different grizzly bears on the screen here. And that's a 5 mile radius. As you can see, yeah, they're in and around town and where people live, very much so. We'll zoom out to about a 10 mile radius. Bears have huge home ranges. They cover a lot of ground. I hear it all the time. Well, I live in town. Do I need to take my bird feeder down or, I don't need a bear resistant container. And I've captured grizzly bears in town in Whitefish and Columbia Falls. I've you know, dealt with black bears near the Kalispell Mall. Yeah, they're absolutely in town. You never want to assume that you're not going to have bear problems here. And yeah, you could be creating a problem for someone that's 10, 20, yeah, 25 miles away. As you can see, these bears, yeah, they cover a lot of ground. So just again, stressing the importance of securing these attractants for, human safety and yeah, trying to keep these bears out of trouble.
And Justine, we can see your mouse, by the way, so that
Oh,
works.
cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Um, So on the screen here, you're looking at an adult male grizzly bear's collar locations. I caught him outside of, or just right outside of town of Whitefish, right here. He was killing pigs. We trapped him, collared him, and relocated him. And then he eventually made his way back, coming up this way and right through town in Whitefish, up around the lake, up onto Big Mountain, where in the summer months, we got a lot of biking going on up there, a lot of people hiking, there's a lot of activity. And then he was down and around this area. And so in that whole time, I didn't have one call on him, whether that was just to report a sighting or him getting into anything. Now, that's not to say he didn't necessarily get into anything or people didn't see him, but typically if I have grizzly bears walking through town in Whitefish, I'm getting a call, especially with you know, so many people have cameras these days, so they do report a lot of that stuff. And so I'm just stressing the point that, yeah, these bears, they live amongst us and they do their best to avoid conflict with us. Yeah, you get some bears in town that get comfortable hanging out in the middle of the day and walk around, sure. But for the most part, a lot of these bears are doing their best to avoid us. They come in when it's dark, we're asleep, it's quiet, and they're moving across the landscape then. So another example of this, this is a collared female grizzly bear with two cubs. This was a couple summers ago, and then every summer she spends her time out on Leisure Island, which is just outside of Kalispell. So yeah, you can see, I mean, this is downtown Kalispell here. Um, and so, yeah, she spends her summers out there again. Never got any calls on her getting into anything, or even reports of sightings. So just because bears live on the valley bottom doesn't mean they're necessarily destined for failure or to become a conflict bear. But unfortunately, the media does love to really shine a light and hyper focus on the bad bears and these conflicts. Obviously, these are images of the extreme. This is what we don't want to happen. This is what we want to prevent from happening. So again, not all bears that live amongst people and neighborhoods are destined to become conflict bears and destined to do stuff like this. We've over the years I've seen many collared bears I get nervous because I'm watching their locations and they're moving around homes and then then they go and hibernate and I don't hear of anything. I don't see them doing anything. And so, yeah, it is possible. And over the years, I've caught many older bears that were unmarked. So we microchip all of our grizzly bears. And so, I'll catch these 15 plus, 18, 19, 20 plus year old bears, and they've never been caught for conflict or research. And then, we even check the database, our DNA database, and they've never been detected for conflicts there either. So when we do have a conflict occur, a lot of times bears will leave hair behind. They rub up against, the chicken coop they're breaking into. And so, yeah, it's a great tool for us to be able to collect that hair and know what bears are doing what. And so it is, again, just amazing to see that some of these older bears have gone their whole lives without getting into trouble. And yeah, and sometimes the reason they are getting into trouble is because as they get older, yeah, maybe their teeth are getting really bad, or yeah, they're starting to kind of go downhill and they start doing things they didn't used to do. So just to put it in perspective again, we have about 1,200 grizzly bears in the NCDE. A lot of people think, oh, I hear it all the time. Well, can't you look up and see where these bears are? We want to know where all these bears are. Don't you have all your bears collared? Absolutely not. We have about like maybe 1 to 2% of our bears collared at a given time. It obviously fluctuates, it changes. But currently we have 7 collared for trend slash that's research in region 1 and about 18 collared for research in all of the NCDE. And then we have 8 collared for conflict in region 1 currently and about 14 collared for conflict in all of the NCDE. So again, a really small percentage of our bears are collared. And yep, bears drop collars for sure. But just so you know, those collars cost between 3 to 4 grand each. So definitely don't have collars for all of our bears up here. So why is it important to secure attractants? So um, obviously our priority is human safety. We don't want this stuff happening. We don't want people in danger. We want to keep our property protected and our pets and our livestock. But we also want to help keep bears out of trouble. We want to help conserve our bear populations here. We live in a really special place up here in Northwest Montana with really diverse ecosystem with abundant wildlife. And yeah, we want to keep it that way. So I always ask people what keeps bears on the landscape? It's public tolerance. Without public tolerance, these bears could easily go away. We've eradicated them before we could do it again. So if I allow for bears to be breaking into homes or garages, people are going to get mad. People are going to sharpen their pitchforks. They're going to take matters into their own hands, and public tolerance is going to go way down. So we do need boundaries. There is a need for boundaries. We have them for people. We don't allow people to break into homes. It should be the same with these bears. The unfortunate part is it means their lives. There's no bear jail we can put them in, unfortunately. And so, again, just stressing the importance of educating people and trying to mitigate these conflicts. So, just a few things that I see and deal with. Um, yeah, bears breaking, like again, these are, the extremes when the behavior is really progressed and these are, really food conditioned bears or really habituated bears. So breaking into garages, homes, cars, ripping into chicken coops, sheds to get garbage. Yeah, you kind of see it all. And so, yeah, let's talk about relocation. It really, relocation can be a really good tool, but it is not the tool. Historically, it was definitely a better option. Back in the day, there was less people, less bears. We had a lot more land to work with. Don't get me wrong, we still got a lot of great land up here in Montana, but times have kind of changed. Yeah, we have more people, we got more bears on the landscape. And when people are like, well, like, can't you just relocate it? Just move this bear. Why can't you just relocate this bear? And I'm always like, well, where? Where am I putting this bear that it's not just going to roll back in and keep getting into trouble? Realistically, if you look at a map of where I can drive and get to, you're talking, I might be driving 2 to 3 hours to go move a bear, and then that bear is back within a week or a few days even, or a couple weeks. And closest, straight line distance from the nearest homes or maybe a town that I'm moving that bear, yeah, maybe 20 to 30 miles. Yeah, there's no magical bear land that I bring these bears and they stay put. Like I said earlier, bears have huge home ranges. They can cover a lot of ground and they have these amazing internal compasses and they know where home is, especially the older bears. So, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, there's just no great option there. And the thing is, I can move bear after bear after bear and spend so much time and resources moving bears, but there's always going to be more to follow. There's always going to be more to fill that gap. And relocation, it works well on younger bears, but like I said, those older bears, they know where home is, and they usually get lost trying to get home, and they end up just continuing those same behaviors in that next town. Truthfully, relocation, it buys us, the landowners and bears, some more time. And sometimes that's just what you need to get things buttoned up. But it truly, it's a Band-Aid solution, and we really need to focus on addressing the root cause, which is the unsecured attractants. Secure the attractants, you secure the problem. So, yeah, hardest part of my job, hands down. I think if you ask most bear specialists, they'll agree with that. Having to lethally remove bears is the worst part of my job. It drives me to continue to educate and work with people because ultimately I don't want to do it. So a lot of people think there's a three strikes you're out rule. There's not. It's all case by case. And it is never a decision that is made lightly. I'm always thinking about, okay, who is this bear? So are we dealing with a young bear, an older bear, a male, a female? What are they doing? What are they getting into? And what's their behavior? Is this a bear that's coming in the middle of the night, getting into unsecured chickens, and is still afraid of people? Or am I dealing with a bear that has no problem walking in the middle of the day and trying to rip into your garbage right in front of you or your garage? So yeah, we have to kind of look at the big picture and take into consideration all the pieces of the puzzle. Up here with grizzly bears, we have to work with the U.S. Fish Wildlife Services because they're endangered, and ultimately they have the final say. They make the final call with what happens with that bear. Over the last 10 years, we've had 40% of grizzly bear mortalities were agency removals up here in the NCDE. And then 50% of that was due to livestock depredation, and then 50%, and then the other 50% was due to, bears being too food conditioned or habituated and property damage. And then within the last 3 years, between myself and Eric, we've captured 176 both black bears and grizzly bears. And of those, we euthanized 36 of those. So that's about euthanizing about 20% of our bears captured in the last 3 years. So family groups. Historically, we needed to keep females alive to recover the population, to grow the population up here. And I apologize. A lot of this is heavily focused on grizzly bears, but a lot of this goes to black bears too. But in terms of the recovery, there was heavy focus on keeping females alive to ensure, conservation of the species. And so when it comes to these females, year after year, I see this. I end up dealing with, there's a handful of females that have been, we'll say, consistent offenders. And I end up dealing with, you know, three, four, five of their offspring, and then dealing with their offspring. So you're seeing this generational conflict history occurring in front of your eyes, and so to get ahead of that, I think there's a shift now. We're fully recovered up here, and so there's less of a priority to try and keep these females on the landscape. And now just looking at them, as the individual and what they're getting into, and ultimately, you know, we're trying to look at the big picture when conserving these females and take into consideration that generational conflict history. Um, it's definitely not an easy thing to do, but removing the one female with bad learned behaviors will conserve more bears ultimately in the long run. So that is definitely a shift I've started to make and started to remove those individuals. So yeah, because look, in hindsight, I could have potentially not had to remove instead of if I had just removed the one bear, I wouldn't have had to remove six. Um, so that's definitely been a big topic of discussion up here. So, attractants and mitigation tools. A lot of us, that live amongst bears, we're dealing with the same type of attractants. It's garbage, fruit trees, freezers, and refrigerators that are outside, livestock. Up here, livestock, bees are considered livestock, chicken coops, bird feeders, pet food and livestock feed, and grain bins. Those are our big things we're dealing with. And where I'm at here in the valley, I deal a lot more with like hobby farms rather than the big ranches. Um, but yeah, for mitigation tools, I would say we're probably using a lot of the same stuff. We're using bear resistant containers. I'm telling people to store garbage and attractants inside sturdy enclosures like garages and sheds and homes. Um, for livestock and chicken coops, electric fence is the best line of defense. It's the number one preventative tool to use along with guard dogs, motion sensor alarms. Um, with chicken coops, I'll tell people to put radios on in a chicken coop to give the idea of human presence. But you're not wanting to rely on that one thing. That is just one piece that can help deter that bear. Bird feeders, I tell people to take them down between March and November, and that's being generous. We have some bears that stay out well into January and come in and out of the den throughout the winter. You can put out bird baths. Birds still need water. You can hang potted flowers. Hummingbirds will still go to those, and bears have no interest in that. Pet food, livestock feed needs to be in bear resistant containers. Grain bins, we use electric fence mats, so we say unwelcome mats or unwelcome pallets. When it comes to fruit trees, I'll get more into a few different options up here that I've started, but again, yes, motion sensor alarms, temporary electric fence if you don't want to have permanent electric fence up around them all year. You can also pick the fruit, replace trees with non-fruit bearing trees. So, like I said, electric fence is the number one line of defense. And over the years, I've definitely seen a shift in people. When I first started, I felt like there was a lot of, well, it doesn't really work, does it? Or, yeah, people telling other people it definitely doesn't work. When I've seen it not work, it's been human error. The Energizer's old, so it's not putting out enough juice, or there's maybe one or two lines of hot wire, which is not significant enough, or people forget to turn it on. So yeah, it's usually human error if it's not working. But the basic, if you were to take away, all right, what do I need when it comes to electric fence? You want at least 4 to 5 hot wires, ankle height to chest height. So you want to build a nice solid wall, nothing that these bears are gonna, like I said, walk through the middle of or step over one wire or walk right under the wires. Um, you want to make a nice wall for them. And again, your substrate matters. So whether you have a really hard rocky ground or grassy, those things are going to play a role in how many wires and what kind of system you do, whether you do just hot wires or alternating hot ground wires. And then you want an energizer with at least 1 joule rating, and we like to see anywhere between 8 to 10,000 volts for keeping bears out. And oftentimes I'll see people, they don't maintain their fences. They don't get a fence tester to even see where they're at, where's their baseline, or check it every night when they turn it on. And that's when, things can happen. Bears can get in. So, Kim Annis, she was a bear conflict specialist for us up out of the Libby Cabinet Yaak area. She made an electric fence guide for beginners. It is a great tool that I hand out to folks. I found people are often really overwhelmed with electric fence. And when I started doing this work, I was too. I didn't really understand it. And so, yeah, it can kind of be overwhelming, and then people kind of shut down and then they just don't want to do it. But there's a lot of resources out there now. Um, and like I said, I have seen a shift. I get more and more people calling me wanting to be proactive rather than reactive. So they're wanting to put up electric fence before they have a problem. And I'm always happy to help go out and assist those people, show them, we'll look at their setup, and then I can tell them the different options that they can do. It doesn't always have to be the basic perimeter fence. There's definitely different ways to get creative with it. And then I give them those options and they can decide what works best for them. So, like I said, I like to get creative with it. So, bears were breaking into these grain bins. So, we made these unwelcome pallets, pretty darn easy to make. And then, yeah, a lot of these ranchers, they don't want to have big perimeter fences. That's not really logistical for them. So, these pallets are really easy to make and really easy to work around. So, a lot of times, if you have a nice big sturdy enclosure, and the bears are just getting into the vulnerable spots, so like the doors and windows, we'll just staple chicken wire or hardware cloth to the door or windows themselves. So yeah, that bear had just been breaking in through the door. So yeah, just put chicken wire on the door and the bear hit that, left, never came back. I had an elderly gentleman who wasn't able to move the freezer off of his porch, and he kept having a black bear come in and get into it. And so, yeah, I just made the actual freezer itself hot. I stapled chicken wire to the floor. He didn't have a problem with me doing that. And that used that as the ground, and then hooked the hot wire to the freezer itself. This female was breaking into this man door, getting into horse feed and cat food. And so I made the door hot. The door is metal, so the only thing with this, you want to make sure you put a sign for your friends and family, letting them know the door is hot, and they'll thank you for that. So, um, Barrier Solutions, a company started by Heather and Derek Reich. They used to work for Tim Manley up here doing bear conflict management for quite a few years, long before my time. And they've also been doing bear conflict management down out of Lake Tahoe for a while. And they created this company making the unwelcome mats, but they're making them very visually appealing for people. In the Lake Tahoe area, you drive around Tahoe, you'll see people have electric fence wires strewn across their front doors and their windows. And yeah, it's definitely not definitely not how you want to live. Definitely not visually appealing. And so they started this company making, yeah, these really nice mats that people can place outside of their doors. And I have quite a few of them. I have the longer ones too that can go in front of garage doors. In this case, I had this female breaking into garages, and in these videos that I'm about to show, she broke into the garage to get a deer that was hanging. And oftentimes, people have their garages and then the road's paved there. There's not a really good way to put up electric fence in that situation. And so these mats have been so useful in these types of situations. Yeah, definitely highly suggest checking them out. So we didn't have time to fix his door, obviously. So put these mats down so the bears couldn't get back in, and they did not. More effective tools that we've been using up here. I can't remember if it was 7 or 8 years ago, I started the Flathead Fruit Cleaning Facebook group. We have about 2,000 followers, and every year it grows a little bit more. It's a really great resource for people within the community to connect with each other. A while, we used to get people calling in the height of our busy season in the fall, asking us, hey, do you know anyone that needs their fruit picked that's having bear problems? Or vice versa. We get people calling us saying, hey, I can't pick my fruit, but do you know anyone that wants to? And so it was just too much middleman stuff. So created this group. And like I said, it's been a really great resource for people. And I just continue to see more and more activity on it every year. I also started the um, Grizzly Wolf Discovery Center fruit cleaning drive, um, donation drive. And so basically, we have about 1 week every fall that you can come and donate your picked fruit, and it goes to the bears at the Grizzly Wolf Discovery Center in West Yellowstone. And some of these bears are bears from up here that were too food conditioned or habituated to be put back in the wild. So it's a good incentive to feed and give back to those bears while also keeping our bears wild up here. And truthfully, it takes a village. So FWP, we used to do it all. We used to be building all the fences, doing all the things, and it has been so nice. We've had more and more organizations and people showing up to to help us in fighting the good fight. So Defenders of Wildlife, they have a great cost share program. They'll cost share up to $500 worth of electric fence equipment. Basically, you fill out this simple little form right here and save your receipts and then send them in and you get reimbursed. So really great program. They'll even help put up electric fence. Chrissy Lambert with USDA Wildlife Services. She is our non-lethal technician up here, and she's been a great asset within the community here, just putting up tons of electric fences. And they also help cost share people in carnivores, doing a lot of work, with Bear Smart communities. Ryan Wilbur, he's with People and Carnivores up in our neck of the woods, and he's been great. I've worked with him in Columbia Falls, getting a garbage ordinance put into place and working, towards some Bear Smart incentives. So, yeah, just awesome organizations, awesome people doing good work. And we also have throughout the communities smaller organizations like Polebridge Bear Smart and Swan Valley Bear Resources, and they'll put in money, or grants for funding to get bear resistant containers to loan out to community members, or other, maybe the motion sensor alarms to help people locally and do bear fairs and different events. So what to do and what not to do. You have a bear on your property and getting into all the things, right? This is a big one when you're trying to work with people, work with landowners, and educate. So ultimately, we really want to teach bears that being around people in homes is not okay. It's not safe for them. It's not safe for us. You may really, really like bears and think they're awesome to watch. They are. I can't deny that. But the thing that I want people to recognize is your tolerance might be high, but your neighbors might not be. And so you get that bear feeling really comfortable around people and around homes. Well, he wanders onto your neighbor's property who doesn't have high tolerance. They might take matters into their own hands, and they often do. Have a lot of bears get killed this way. So it's just a good practice to teach bears to not, that being around people in homes is not okay. Make it really uncomfortable. Make them leave. Yell at them. The human voice is the best deterrent. To them, we are a threat. We are danger. So yell at them, bang pots and pans, use air horns, car alarms. I think I mentioned it earlier. Keep radios on, talk shows in barns and coops. And if nothing else is really working, and you're still having problems, definitely call your local bear specialist as soon as possible. And yeah, keep in mind that the longer they hang around, the more likely they are to eventually get curious and maybe get into stuff too. What you don't want to do, and what you'll see a lot of, especially on social media, is the videos of bears up on a picnic table getting into food. And people are just taking videos of it and laughing, and they think it's cute or funny. But really, realistically, that bear is probably going to end up dead sooner than later in one way or another. So I always tell people, please don't just watch them quietly and take pictures from a safe place. Try and make them leave by doing all those other things, yelling, banging pots and pans, making loud noises. And once they do leave, go and secure and clean up that attractant. Um, I ask people, please don't use guns as scare tactics. I've had so many bears, just kind of their rear ends filled with birdshot or even buckshot at times. I've had bears killed this way. People think they're shooting above their heads or next to them to scare them, and they end up killing the bear. I've also had people shoot their neighbors' houses. So guns are just not the best scare tactic altogether. So ultimately, my goals as a bear specialist here, I want to hold people accountable. You know, knowledge is power, and we have the knowledge. We know how bears work. We have the tools and the resources to mitigate these conflicts. Um, I get calls all the time. People just want me to move the bear. And yeah, no, my answer is no. We're going to secure the attractant. That's what we're going to do first. And if we continue to have problems, then I'll go those extra steps. But we definitely need to hold ourselves and each other accountable. And I urge people, please call us as soon as you're having a problem. Don't wait a couple weeks because chances are it's going to progress. It's going to get worse. Um, and the bear has a better chance in the long run the sooner you call us. And you're better off too the sooner you call us. We can get out there and do what we need to do, whether that's securing the attractant or relocating or whatnot. I really need all the pieces of the puzzle to make decisions. So, if I just get one call about a bear getting into something, but 30 other people aren't calling me, I don't know how bad the situation truly is. So yeah, just make sure you're communicating with us, um, and working with us. That's the best you can do. And also communicate with neighbors. Like I said, hold each other accountable. If you're doing all the right things, but your neighbor isn't, they're the one creating the problem for everybody else. So work together. Um, and yeah, I just want to continue to educate. Like I said, knowledge is power. And continue to mitigate and prevent conflicts using the tools we have, and we continue to learn. So hopefully, yeah, we who knows what other tools are coming down the line. And ideally, I'm setting as few traps as possible. If I'm doing my job right, hopefully I'm not having to trap so many bears and move so many bears and euthanize so many bears. So um, the biggest thing I want is to set both people and bears up for success. And yeah, just continue to do what we can to do that. So yeah, with that, I will take any questions people have. And yeah, thank you for helping conserve our wildlife. And I'll also put up my information right here. So if you guys need that, feel free to reach out too. Thank you.
Justine, that was incredible. Thank you so much. Lot
Yeah.
of lot of great information there and opinions. So thank you. Um,
Yeah.
you talked about the fruit cleaning programs. One of the problems we're having here right now is it's a bad food year. And a lot of people
Hmm.
are commenting, what are these bears supposed to eat? And what's the problem with bears coming into town and eating apples? Can you clarify for us what is the problem with bears getting apples?
Well, a lot of these fruit trees are next to homes. They're right in our neighborhoods, right? I'm assuming. And so, yeah, you're just essentially having bears hanging out again, yeah, close to homes in your neighborhood. And when they're doing that, they're more likely to also explore, like I said, to get curious and start checking other things out, be tempted by other things that we're leaving out, garbage, chickens. So, there is that aspect. I mean, I definitely understand. Yeah. Like you're like, oh, apples, fruit, natural. I can understand that, but the idea is you still, yeah, you don't want these bears hanging close to homes and people.
Yeah, thanks. And you talked about the cubs from the conflict females. Are you
Mhm.
finding that these cubs that learn bad behavior as cubs from their mom tend to repeat that as adults?
Yeah, not all cubs that come from, we'll say my consistent offenders are destined to become conflict bears themselves. Definitely a higher probability for sure. Yeah, we end up seeing a lot of these bears go on to do these things and get into conflicts and have that progressive worse behaviors. But every once in a while, I'll see, oh, a bear here and there that was from a certain female that I'm like, oh, wow, I can't believe she's from this female, but she's not getting into anything. I mean, bears, they have different personalities and temperaments just like anything else. So it kind of just depends. But yeah, I would say the majority of them do go on to kind of get into trouble.
Yeah, thanks. Lori
Yeah.
Lindsay from Florida asked, what deterrents have you had the best success with? Critter getters are a brand, as a brand, have gotten so expensive. So curious what different types you're using and what you find most successful.
Yeah, so critter getters, I felt like the quality went down over the last few years. I switched over to Margot gadflies. Again, they're not super cheap by any means. I can't remember the price tag on those ones. But yeah, Margot gadfly. What I like about these two is they have a little solar, the battery that it's hooked up to. There's also a little solar component. So they charge during the day in the sunlight. So you don't have to worry about switching out the batteries. And I found they're just a better product.
Okay. Our friend Lena has two questions for you. How effective are the mats in deterring bears? I'm
They're-
assuming she means the electric ones.
Oh yeah, they're great. I mean, it's electric fence, but just in matte form. As long as you're doing it properly, you want to think about, especially if you're making your own, you want to think about, where kind of think like a bear. Where's that bear stepping? Are you making an alternating hot ground system? And then I would highly suggest making an alternating hot ground system, but then also having a ground rod in as well. So if the bear is partly stepping on the ground and stepping on the pallet or the mat, they're getting zapped, from essentially both uh, the ground and the hot alternating hot ground. But yeah, they're super effective.
Yeah, and you kind of talked
You know,
about, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say at our green box sites and our landfills, at the gates and the entryways, we do have those electrified mats. So, if the gates aren't shut, if bears are trying to walk over those, they're getting zapped.
Yeah. You had kind of talked about, I think it was chicken coops that you can kind of electrify the most likely area that the bears are going to try to get in, which would be, windows and doors. A lot of
Yep.
questions that come up with the electric mats is I've got a bear trying to break into my kitchen window. Can I borrow a mat? But what's stopping that bear from avoiding that and trying a different window?
Well, yeah, and that is something you definitely have to think about. And can be tricky depending on the situation, right? If you show up and there's tons of different entry points that a bear can get into, then I'm probably going to put up a perimeter fence. And that's where, yeah, you want to weigh out like, okay, what's the best option for this particular situation? And that's where I would be doing a perimeter.
Okay, makes sense.
Mhm.
Lena's second question is, do you have an aversive conditioning program using rubber bullets, stars, etc., to deter confident bear behavior?
Yeah, so yeah, those bears that are really, really comfortable around people. So I actually these days am using up here, we've kind of switched over to using paintball guns. Um, so I do have stars, I got rubber bullets, I got cracker shells, I do have all that stuff, and I do use it every once in a while. But you definitely want to be cautious. There have been, and we haven't had it happen here, but there have been bears that have been killed by rubber bullets, if you do a gut shot. Or I actually, quite a few years ago, I had a female grizzly bear that I caught in whitefish, and we were putting her back into the trap, and we were like, what the heck is this? It looked like green paracord was coming out of her ankle. And I was like pulling on it, and I was like, that is like lodged in there. So we ended up taking her to the vet the next day, and they had to surgically remove a beanbag round. The local police officers had lobbed some beanbag rounds at her from a really close distance, and well, yeah, one got completely lodged in her foot. So yeah, you want to be careful with that stuff. And so I like the paintball gun because it gives that negative physical reinforcement, but there's not too much in terms of worrying about anything lethal or injuries occurring from it. Um, yeah, but they're definitely the other thing about when you're dealing with these really habituated bears, you got to think about is you really have to stay on them. I mean, for it to truly be effective, you have to continuously like be there to haze and harass them for them to really learn. The one and done isn't really going to work. Um, but I mean, it's doable and it depends on the area you're in too. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Not seeing any more questions. I've got one that might take you a bit, but can you walk us through a scenario if you get a call from a landowner and you go out there, they've got unsecured trash, they've got bird feeders up, a bear was in their chicken coop and killed some chickens. Can you walk us through your process of how you go about that? And you had mentioned your partnerships with a couple of nonprofits that assist in this. Do you
Mhm.
do, if they need electric fence for their chicken coops, do you do that? Do you help them do that? Do you source that out to the nonprofits? How does all that work?
So yeah, there's a lot here to unpack. So, when it comes to the electric fence now, if it's a bigger project, a lot of times, yeah, I don't have conflicts, have increased here. And so I don't always have time to do the big fence projects we used to have time to do. And so now I will source those out to Chrissy, to people in carnivores, to defenders of wildlife. Um, that's what they're here to do. And so I definitely, yeah, we'll use them for that for sure. If it's a smaller, easy, little coop, I'll and I have the time, I'll definitely do that. Now if I'm going out for that initial response and I see, okay, they still got 20 chickens left. I have temporary electric net fence I use, and I'll put that up around the coop because I know that bear's probably coming back tonight. So I'm gonna secure everything that I can. So yeah, I'm securing the chicken coop. I'm putting that temporary electric net fence up. I'm talking to the landowner about, yeah, the bird feeder, and why they need to take it down. Having that whole education, that time with them, spending that time with them, explaining it, really breaking it down for people. I found like you really have to. Um, if you just tell people to take their bird feeder down, it kind of just stops there. You really want them to understand the why. Um, and it really is all about approach too, and being able to read people. I can step out of my vehicle and within seconds know how I'm going to handle this particular person. Am I coming at them with a little bit of a harder approach, or am I going to build that relationship first and then maybe we'll get there and talk about that stuff. It totally just depends on the situation, on the people. But yeah, ultimately, I'm trying to get everything secured. So when that bear comes back tonight, they're not getting in there's no reason for them to be anchored anymore. There's no bird feeder out, there's no chickens. I don't know what the other thing, I don't know if you said fruit trees or what it was, but yeah,
Brad,
we're doing our best to just secure all of those attractants and explain again why we're doing that in the long run, and people might demand they want a trap. Well, you just spend some time explaining, well, hey, I can set a trap, but I don't want you to have to keep having this problem. So let's try and figure out a solution for the long term.
Yeah, good point. I've been out to a few spots, got a call for bears killing chickens, and you go out to the landowner and they've got the chicken coop, but they've got goats, they've got livestock feed, all spread out in different areas, which would require 3 different treatments. So how
Oh,
do you
yeah.
do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, we definitely, yeah, we'll have the whole conversation of, yeah, and then there's people that are like, well, I move this around and I move this often. And so, yeah, you really have to work with them, problem solve with them. What is going to be the best option in this situation? Um, and sometimes it is just, okay, we're going to do a really big perimeter fence around your whole property. I mean, yeah, we do those. And that is where now these days I'm sourcing that out to Chrissy, to Rory, Russ, these people that are working for these programs that specifically they're here to do that. And then so it also frees up my time to keep moving on and dealing with the next conflicts. So yeah, some of those properties where everything's spread out, sometimes, yeah, you just got to do a big perimeter fence. And then other times you decide, all right, a big perimeter fence is not the way to go, but yeah, they might have a few different electric fences within there. And I always try to help people in terms of figuring out the cost sharing. So, I'll talk to people about the Defenders of Wildlife cost share program. There's definitely ways to get that price tag to go down.
Yeah. Can we bug you with one last question?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Lena asked, do you use livestock guardian dogs, properly bred ones, to protect farms? And if so, have you ever had any show of aggression towards humans, particularly humans that are not connected with them, not owners, people they don't know?
I mean, I don't use guardian dogs, but I mean, a lot of people do have them around here. Um, And then depending on the property, sometimes I'll have landowners be like, just so you know, my don't ever come to my property if I'm not there. My dog's pretty aggressive. They can be more aggressive for sure. But I've also met sweetheart guardian dogs. So it just totally depends. I think it depends on the breed too. And then I don't know if you're maybe referring to like Karelian bear dogs. I've never had one. I don't have one. But Tim Manley, Eric, they've had them before. Again, they're a great tool, but they're not the tool. But I also know it depends on who you ask because some people will say it's the best tool. So totally, yeah, that's one of those like, yep, try it out, use it. Um, for me, realistically, around this area, I mean, I can't be running Carillion bear dogs through whitefish for many reasons. Yeah, safety of dogs, other dogs, go running through different people's property. That's definitely, you're getting into some more difficult territory there. But for an area that you have more space to work with, I think it can be a great tool.
Yeah, thanks. And I guess a broader picture, what role do communities play in adding to your issues, and what would you like them to do that they're not doing?
Hmm. I mean, again, education is such a big piece of it. A lot of people they truly just don't know. They truly are ignorant and not in a mean way. They just don't have an idea of like, I mean, I have a lot of friends that sometimes it shocks me. I'm like, they know I'm, the bear girl or whatever, and yet I'm having to explain things to them that to me I find very simple and basic, but to them it's totally foreign. So it really is just about spreading that awareness and education amongst neighbors and community members. That is just such a big piece of it. And then, yeah, that kind of applying that peer pressure a little bit, I think goes a long way. And it sometimes can go a longer way than, tattling to us and having us come out or the wardens. I think, yeah, it can go a lot longer if your neighbor isn't happy with you. Um, but yeah, I mean, just the continuous use of electric fence and the preventative tools that we're talking about here today. That's all I can ask for within these communities. Put pressure on your local your city councils, your county commissioners to make changes. Uh, a lot of stuff starts in the legislation, truthfully, and so we can sit here all day long and talk about the things we want to change, and we can try and change these things, but um, really a lot of stuff ends up, in legislation. And so that's where some of the bigger changes need to be made.
Right. But you must get so frustrated in dealing with conflict bears that are hitting trash, and you know why. And if the community isn't doing their part, that must be
Mhm.
extremely aggravating.
Oh yeah. This job is both so rewarding and so frustrating at the same time.
Yeah,
Totally depends on the day and the hour.
yeah,
But yeah, for sure. I mean, when you hear people, I have friends that give me crap about, having gotten bear resistant containers put out throughout Whitefish. They implemented all homes must have bear resistant containers. And so I have a lot of friends that live in the Whitefish area and they'll give me crap about, oh, it's so annoying to, open the container or whatnot. And yeah, I'm like, well, okay, you can come with me next time I have to euthanize that bear then. Like,
yeah,
I just don't think people know. I think people are really far removed. I think we tend to be pretty self-involved. And so until it's something that's really in front of us or happening to us or affects us, we kind of just look the other way. So just
yeah.
want people to be more aware.
Oh, that's a great place to end.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I actually had a research and augmentation trap triggered right before this started. So I'm like, ooh, what did I catch?
Okay. I hope you don't have a long night in front of you. So thank you.
I
Thank you
might, but
so much.
all part of it. So
Okay. Well, thank you. That was beautiful.
yeah, yeah. Well, thanks again for hosting this. I think it's really great that you're doing this.
Thanks, Justine.
Thanks so
Yeah,
much, everyone, and thanks, Justine. Incredible presentation. I think we heard a lot of information that we haven't heard yet in the speaker series, which is amazing.
good.
And stay tuned, everyone. There might be a extra bonus session in the next couple of weeks, so look for an email from Brian and Bear Smart Durango. And we also want to give a shout out to the Durango Herald for sponsoring this series. So thank you so much and have a great, safe evening, everyone. Take good care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, you guys.